the body count is always bigger. Number two, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage candy.
2 years after the first series of murders in Woodsboro, as Sydney acclimates to college life, someone donning the Ghostface costume begins a new string of killings. Scream 2 slashed its way into theaters December 12th, 1997, less than a year after the original was released. Now, being the clever businessman that screenwriter Kevin Williamson was, he had sweetened his deal with Harvey Weinstein's Dimension Films when he packaged the sale of his original Scream script, then titled Scary Movie, as a planned trilogy. He had already written 2 separate 5-page outlines for 2 sequels, and with the success of the first movie, Scream 2 was greenlit and pushed into production while Scream 1 was still in the theaters. Now, being that Scream 2 was fast-tracked so quickly into production, the film definitely had its share of setbacks, including major script leaks. One of these script leaks actually being the super secret identity of the film's killers. Because of these leaks, frequent rewrites were required to keep the film's secrets a surprise. These rewrites often handed off to Wes Craven just hours before shooting. I can only imagine the stress on set, even for a pro like Craven. But being the master that he was, Wes Craven was able to turn in a movie that opened to $32.9 million in its opening weekend, with a lifetime gross of $172 million, nearly matching Scream's $173 million lifetime run. It's still the 3rd highest grossing slasher in history, only behind the original Scream and Halloween 2018. Evil dies tonight. Being that Wes Craven returned to direct with Kevin Williamson back to write the script, the movie still has that Scream feel, the tone. The look is all still there, along with many principal characters returning as well. Stabby, bloody kills, if not a bit repetitive, are back, including one controversial kill that we'll discuss here in a minute. I'm sure you guys know which one I'm talking about. Now, outside of just a few minor nitpicks here and there, I really enjoyed Scream 2. There are only a handful of things that held it back from me enjoying it just as much as I did the first one. But before we get into those, let's talk about what really worked for me this time around with Scream 2, and I liked a lot. There's a lot to like about this movie, including, once again, an incredible opening scene. Now, this is one aspect of the film that is absolutely as good as the first, if not a bit better. Bigger doesn't always mean better, but in this case, the layered meta reference to the first film, having the movie within a movie, it's just perfect. Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith are great, and Jada Pinkett really sells her death, doesn't she? Holy shit. The chaos in the theater, the movie projected over her body as people slowly realize she's been actually attacked, it's extremely effective and honestly is still pretty shocking scene. It's even more eerie when you think about the Aurora shooting that happened 15 years later in 2012. A scene like this, simply put, will just never be seen again in the mainstream. This movie also does an even further dive into, as a society, our obsession with real-life murder and true crime. The theater even handing out fake knives to patrons to watch a film that celebrates the Woodsboro murders. And then you have Gale Weathers continuing to exploit the tragedy for profit, as well as a newly vindicated Cotton Weary trying to get in on the action while it's hot with an interview with Diane Sawyer. Even though the first movie already examined people's fascination with true crime and deconstructing the horror genre itself, Scream 2 was able to tread similar waters while still feeling fresh and just as urgent as its predecessor. It's also good to see the film carrying over its best aspects of good writing, a strong lead character, and building up secondary characters to the forefront, being that we lost most of the major players of the first movie with Stu, Billy, and Tatum. Unfortunately, though, that does bring me to my first complaint, and that's that to keep the body count up in Scream 2, you always have to have more kills in a sequel. We had to have fresh victims, and the characters we get here just feel really underdeveloped, and because of that, the kills in Scream 2 have very little emotional impact. We just met these folks, and being that the focus of the film is already hinging on Sid as well as Gale and Dewey's budding romance, the people sliced and diced in this installment, honestly, I just didn't give a shit about, and because of that, the fills fell flat like standard slasher stuff, not to mention that stabby kills in horror always feel repetitive to me anyway. Slashers are always more suspenseful when we're worried about the people that are gonna die. That's just the way it is. Aside from the cop car crash scene being a pretty good suspense gag as Sid and her friend slowly crawl over Ghostface to escape, other than that, the kills and the characters felt pretty weak. Undercooked characters will also come into play in my final complaint, but before that, I have to say one thing ahead of my final thoughts, and that's, What the hell were they thinking with Randy's death? In my humble opinion, he was the most exciting and interesting character carried over from the first film, and what they decide to do is kill him off unceremoniously with this van-shaking off-screen kill. It's blasphemy if you ask me. They did Randy wrong, I tell ya. They did him wrong. SMDH, man. RIP, brother. And now we circle back to that whole underdeveloped character thing, and let's talk about that killer reveal. First off, Timothy Olyphant's character is so absent, and his presence in the film is so sporadic that his involvement and his cheap motivation of this flashy trial is ridiculous and silly. Not to mention his flippant turn to cartoonish psycho was completely absurd, to the point of almost being laughable.
I'm gonna blame the movies. Well, you see, this is just the beginning, a prelude to the trial. That's where the real fun is, because these days it's all about the trial.
I just wasn't buying it, man. The only reason this random heel turn is even necessary is because it's unbelievable for our other killer to do the job on her own. And now that brings us to Aunt Jackie, aka Mrs. Loomis, aka Debbie Salt, Lil Debbie Salts.
I'm right where I belong, living on Failure Street, 2 blocks south of Pathetic. My zip code? All zeros.
It makes complete and total sense that a mother would want to avenge her son's death. Hell, I'd probably do the same shit as a mother. Anyway, losing a son would be tragic, even if he was a giant piece of shit. That being said, I think this could have been handled much better. I mean, for me, a killer reveal always works better when we, as an audience, have at least some familiarity with the killer. Otherwise, it feels out of the blue and it just loses impact. It falls flat. A strong betrayal from a known character adds a devastating shock that just can't be matched by somebody we've never seen before. In Scream 2, we have to be told who Mrs. Loomis is through exposition and explanation. It just couldn't hold a candle to the reveal of the 2 characters we spent an entire movie with in the original. Instead, in Scream 2, we get a character with 2 lines and another she found on some random website who somehow infiltrated Sydney's friend circle, commits multiple random murders only to plan on being caught, to be seen on TV, and then to trade that for a life in prison. It's simply just convoluted and honestly just sort of stupid. The second the proverbial curtains and literal curtains are pulled back, the movie loses steam, at least for me. Not to mention the fact that Laurie Metcalf's look isn't even the least bit threatening. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have zero issue with female Ghostface. The problem here begs the question, how terrifying can a woman with a Hillary Clinton pantsuit, high heels, and helmet hair really be? The answer is not very. I know this seems insignificant, but honestly it hurts the reveal. Listen, imagine she shows up with a rougher look. I mean, this supposedly is the woman who raised the gloomy and broodingly edgy Billy Loomis, the murderer. I picture more of a Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds type of look. I mean, this is the 90s for God's sake. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't it have been more of a showing of how truly deceptive Mrs. Loomis had been, wearing this reporter costume to hide her true seedy identity? The look of your killer, especially in a slasher movie, is extremely important. In this, she just looks silly and isn't even the least bit intimidating. I just found myself kind of laughing. I truly feel like giving Mrs. Loomis a darker reveal, a more disheveled appearance, really would have played better on screen, effectively selling a darker character. Bulging your eyes out of your face like a goldfish doesn't make up for your character looking like a crackhead morning show host. Had the Ghostface reveal been a little stronger, I really feel like this movie would have been on par with the original. But with this reveal, the weaker characters, and the dismissive death of Randy, my favorite character, it buckles under the pressure of the genius of the prior film. But criticisms aside, these downfalls shouldn't deter anyone from checking it out. It's still a stronger sequel than most and shouldn't be discounted. I had a good time with it, and I hope you guys had a good time listening to my random theories and thoughts in my review of Scream 2. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by today. Look forward to a review of every single movie in the Scream franchise, including the brand new Scream this week. I'll be dropping all those videos. I'll link my review to my first Scream review down below. Be sure to check out my recently launched second channel. On that channel, I talk about physical media, Blu-rays, toy and collectibles, all kinds of nerdy collector stuff. Be sure to subscribe to that, like this video. Guys, stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.